James Cirrone. I'm a journalism major, I'm a freshman, and I'm going to tackle the question, why did Douglas Blackmon choose the title Slavery by Another Name for his book? First of all, it's a response to the false narrative propagated by society that slavery was abolished after the Civil War. This is a false narrative because, explained by Michelle Alexander, former slaves had a brief moment in the sun before they were returned to a status akin to slavery. This is mostly because of the convict leasing system and peonage laws. Blackmon also wanted to recast Jim Crow as not just a collection of unjust laws, but a system that sought to imprison blacks solely for cheap labor through the convict leasing system. It was a return to forced labor. Just another way to keep the system as it was, keep the status quo. There are actually a lot of parallels between the convict leasing system and the new Jim Crow, commonly referred to as mass incarceration. In both systems, there's an aggressive and unequal enforcement of laws. In the convict leasing system, there you had vagrancy laws, other laws defining activities such as mischief and insulting gestures, as explained by Alexander. You also had pig laws, which, if you stole livestock, you would be thrown in jail. On the new Jim Crow, it's the drug war, aggressive and unequal enforcement of drug laws. According to the NAACP, African Americans and whites use drugs at similar rates, but the imprisonment rate of African Americans for drug charges is almost 6 times that of whites. So there's a disparity there. Then you have a prison population that explodes in both systems. According to Michelle Alexander, during the decade following redemption, the convict population grew 10 times faster than the general population. Obviously, that's an issue, and that's not a natural thing. During the drug war, according to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, state and federal prisons in 1980, there was a year-end total of 329,122 inmates. In 2016, state and federal prisons had jurisdiction over 1,458,200 persons. That is a quadruple. Since 1980, the prison population has quadrupled. That is not normal, and it can be explained by the policies advanced by the Reagan administration and the presidential administrations following Reagan. In the convict leasing system, prisoners are forced to do labor, and they are leased from prisons by corporations. And prisoners today are forced to do labor for tiny wages. According to Alexander, sometimes as little as 25 cents. So that's barely anything. That's not even really a wage. That's just an insulting amount of money. You can't do anything with that. It's wage slavery. The last point, according to the film Slavery by Another Name, violators of the black codes were prosecuted by former slaveholders presenting an obvious conflict of interest, and of course, blacks ended up in prison more than whites. To go back, additionally, in 1850, 99% of Alabama's prison population was white. Then, in 1870, 85% of Alabama's prison population was black. That the roles almost reversed there. As soon as the blacks became free, then they'd start filling up prisons. That's the new way to control them. Today, in our justice system, the prosecutor is the most powerful law enforcement official in the criminal justice system. That remains the same. With such a large disparity of blacks and other minorities ending up in prison, there is a case to be made for widespread racial bias. Whether it is conscious or unconscious is hard to prove. But with all that said, the real question here to ask is, are we living in a world where black Americans are free, or are we living in a world where black Americans are still chattel, being herded into prisons like sheep?